I'm thinking of tokenization allows for the tokenization of culture, which is the release of value from culture. And I spend a lot of time in this space on a lot of things. I've got a project that I'm setting up within this space, and it's not to do with NFTs per se. I think NFTs are the first manifestation of culture. I think the DAO movement is culturally interesting. I think the social tokens is going to be culturally enormous. I noticed that there is currently coalescing around culture as, do you own a punk or do you own an ape or whatever it is. Some of that will last, some of it won't last. I mean, a ton of the tail of that stuff is just vaporware, but that's fine. Everyone kind of knows they're having fun and doing it. But culture as an investment is the big thing that's coming. I can't express how big that is. But don't forget, for everybody, music is the soundtrack to your life, or sports, or all of these things. If you even think back, what was I doing in 2011? You kind of think back to what music it was on, or what big events, what sport. They're all cultural. Culture is one of the things that drives humans, or gives them. It's one of the great reward systems humans have, is culture. And we've never been able to profit from it. In fact, just the brands did themselves that sold into culture. But this way, we get to participate in culture in a more meaningful way. I think it's a revolution. And we'll be able to kind of live in our subcultures. We've gone from nation states and we're splintering into sovereign states. Facebook is going to end up being a sovereign state essentially, by all yardsticks, right? It's got a leader, kind of a mission, a set of rules, and it's going to have a system of money, and it's going to have defined borders because they're building their own metaverse. Right? That's a sovereign state. Arguably, some of these DAOs are like sovereign states. I mean, what's the difference between a corporation and a sovereign state? Not a lot. The difference between a corporation and a sovereign state is they don't have their own money, but these do. So it's kind of mind-blowing, right? People aren't ready for the change that's coming. People can't really figure out what this all means. But the way we've understood the world over the last 300 or 400 years is about to change because of the internet, and then because of what tokens do to coalesce people around a particular cause or culture or belief or whatever. I've written a lot about this, and if I've spent time at the forefront of anything in this space, it's all of this stuff that I've tried to be a thought leader in it. It's very simply, if I go out of my office here, I've got a bunch of famous musician prints on the wall, and they're all signed by the photographer. Now, the JPEG argument would suggest they're worthless, but they're not, because there are a limited number of prints signed by the author. Now, if I'd bought the one that had the negatives as well, it'd be worth even more. So people don't understand properly. Anybody who makes the argument it's just JPEG doesn't understand authenticity and the human valuation of how we value authenticity, proven authenticity and scarcity. The same is true when people see digital art like Beeple, which I think is phenomenal, in a different medium, and they go, well, this is nonsense. Well, they said the same thing about Dali, Jackson Pollock. They said the same thing about Banksy. When Banksy came, started graffiti art, everyone's like, this is worthless. Well, guess what? It's not. Same with Damien Hirst. Same with Andy Warhol, printing from the factory, limited replica. It's the same thing. Look, people will get it very quick. Again, I'm a big music fanatic, and on my wall in my bathroom is framed program from Live Aid, because I was at Live Aid, right? That has value. And it'll have more value in time because it's scarce. And it's a cultural moment in time that all of humanity came together. Everybody does shit like that. And the younger you are, the more you understand how this works, whether it's from being on TikTok or being on Instagram. So I think it's intuitive to most people. I think what is not intuitive, what is holding people back is the wallet experience is so bad. One of the things I argue is, if I'm going to send you $100, we will not know and should not know or care over what blockchains it travels. It may start in XRP, go across the lightning layer, and then finish in something else. It's irrelevant. You know, it's not going to be one or the other. You're not going to choose on your phone, oh, I'm going to do it this way. It'll be whatever the cheapest routing is. Same as we do with mobile phones, right? We call each other, send each other messages easily. But people need to be able to have the experience where it all comes on this. That's where it's all going. We're just not there yet. Verse is where we live a larger percentage of our life in the digital world than we do in the physical world. That includes augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D and 2D. We are in the metaverse now, essentially, right? We're chatting as if we're sitting in the same room having a coffee, right? We're so used to it now that it doesn't feel like a barrier at all. That's the metaverse. The metaverse is when I can instantaneously pay you money and we don't care what rails it goes across. That's the metaverse. The metaverse is the fact that Apple have now put things in your phone that ping 5 million times a second, I believe it is, that map out your everywhere you are and will create an augmented reality map of the world in granular detail. That map of the world will help you navigate everything. That is the metaverse. The metaverse is not just the Ready Player One gaming world. It's the digitization of everything, where we spend most of our lives being digital. And right now, we wouldn't say, oh, we're living our lives digitally, but we are, right? Because the majority of what we're doing right now, even though we're living in physical spaces, we're actually concentrating and putting the focus of our attention in the digital world. And that's how I think about it. It's that entire nexus where everything comes together and becomes digitally fluid. Gaming existed without crypto. But what crypto changed was proven ownership in a digital world. So that was a fundamental building block that I think was necessary. Much like we had the internet, but we didn't have this transfer of value mechanism. So I think they're one in the same. You know, we also use the term Web 3.0. It's all basically the same thing. It's that seamless digital integration where we don't need to use the physical realm. And I think crypto is the only way that we can have ownership within that world. We can transfer other ways, but we can't have that trusted ownership, which I think is the most important part of it all. Because in which case it's nothing, right? It's not a world. Yeah. We've all been too led by sci-fi and think that there is one metaverse. I think the metaverse is a much more subtle, total existence that's not based around one thing. That's like saying we only use Facebook as our platform. We will choose which parts of the metaverse to interact with, much as we choose which parts to be online. But I do think it's extremely powerful that you can be a kid in Ethiopia, you can have an avatar, and you could go to online Harvard and compete. And you can't have racism, sexism, or the fact that you're not in the same country and don't have the same advantages. These things are game-changing for society globally. But it also means globally we have to compete with a lot of people. And you're gonna onboard a lot of people into the global workforce. But I think it's all good. I think it's going to create GDP in its own right that is above the kind of GDP of the world, of the physical world as we know it. And I talk about, like social tokens being a layer of value above equity. I think the metaverse is a layer of GDP that exists outside of physical GDP. And I've talked of it akin to discovering the Americas. You discover a new part of the world that you didn't think existed, and suddenly your entire view of the world has to change because now you can create more. It's just noise. We know there's going to be regulation, and we know that they have to adapt to this new thing into the system, and they know that they have to get their fair share of taxes, and there's no chance that they can get rid of it because of the scale of which it's growing. It's almost impossible. So regulation is going to be part of our lives for the next 30 years in crypto. It will keep changing. Some will be bad regulation, some will be good regulation, but over time, it's not going away. And it's fine. It'll in fact drive adoption.
To how crypto is going to touch people first, like what is going to be the thing that really onboards 1 billion people onto
social tokens.
Social tokens.
Without question. because we're all members of these communities. Some of these communities are massive, global pop stars, global sports franchises. Some of these have absolutely enormous communities of which people want to participate in. Once you solve the wallet thing, people will just very, very naturally become community owners. Even small groups of people can coalesce around that, and you will have a number of these things, and therefore you're participating in a community of which, if you add value to the community, the value of that token goes up. It becomes a great behavioral incentive, and it becomes part of your asset base. It's really clever. It drives really vibrant communities, and it's very powerful, I think.